Hey there, it's August 11th. This is the Bald Prairie Real Estate Weekly News Recap, where I go through interesting news articles from the past week and give you my thoughts and opinions on it. My name is Matthew Pfeifer. I'm a real estate agent in Regina. That's my trusted assistant, 𝗫𝗫𝗲𝗬𝗲. We're going to be going through the latest jobs numbers in Canada, what's going on with the first-time homebuyer savings account. We're going to be going through people moving from Toronto to Alberta. That's a big focus from the Alberta government right now. And speaking of government, the Canadian federal government has now decided that the housing crisis in Canada is not their problem to deal with, and in fact, they plan on making it worse. But before we get into the news, let's start off with another one of my terrible bad dad jokes. I was once so broke that I couldn't afford my electricity bill. Those were some of the darkest days of my life. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in a future episode, put it in the comments below. Let's get into this week's news. Let's kick this off with a quick educational segment. I want to talk about 0% down payment programs because sometimes you see these advertised, and it's not a free down payment. It is a loan for the down payment. And that matters a lot because it's going to count against you as part of your mortgage qualification. You have what's called debt service ratios, and when you're borrowing the down payment, that has to be counted as part of that debt service ratio. So that means you're going to have lots of room in that debt service ratio. You're not pushing this to the max. You're also going to have to be a very qualified buyer. Strong income, strong job history, great credit score, great credit history, and the list goes on, which then makes you probably wonder, well, if somebody has all of that, wouldn't they already have the money for a down payment? And generally the answer is yes. Now, every lender that offers these, it's highly specific to a specific situation. So there's not really a blanket answer on how you would go about doing this. But again, you're going to need to be a very qualified buyer to even have a chance at getting one of these 0% down payments. Let's start off the news talking about the jobs numbers, because Stats Canada just came out with the most recent jobs numbers. Pretty much all year long, the market expectations for how many jobs would be created was nowhere close to how many jobs were actually created. Generally, the number of jobs created has been blowing market expectations out of the water. And this month, we saw a flip. The expectation was to see about 25,000 jobs created. Instead, we saw a job loss of 6,000 jobs. Now, that, of course, has a lot of people asking, how's the Bank of Canada going to look at this? Well, actually, probably going to give this a thumbs up. Like it or not, Bank of Canada wants to see people lose their jobs because they want to see less people spending less money. They want to drive down inflation, and of course, if people don't have jobs, they're not going to be spending money. So short term, this is going to be something Bank of Canada wants to see. They've of course got an interest rate announcement coming up in September, so not too far away. They're going to be looking at jobs numbers, but also GDP, and of course, the inflation data. Both of those are coming out fairly soon. I'll talk about those in a future weekly update. Now, how is this going to impact the Canadian real estate market? Well, people that don't have jobs either can't afford to continue paying for their existing mortgage, or if they don't have a job, they're not going to qualify for a mortgage. So this, of course, is going to have downward pressure on the Canadian real estate market if we continue to see job losses. There's been talk for a long time, going all the way back into last year, that in 2023, we're for sure going to see a recession, and we still might, but as of right now, we've seen very strong job numbers up until this most recent one. And of course, very strong immigration, which has been kind of keeping things rolling in the Canadian economy and made it more resilient than I think a lot of people expected. RBC is saying they're seeing a strong uptick in people looking at opening that first-time homebuyer savings account. First-time homebuyer savings account was announced earlier this year, and it was rolled out officially early in the spring, but none of the banks were really set up to actually offer. They said they were waiting for some more direction from the Canada Revenue Agency so they could properly offer this. That's now all been resolved, and we're starting to see people open up these first-time homebuyer savings accounts. And again, according to RBC, they're seeing a strong uptick in people looking at this program. And at first, I actually didn't think this was a great program, and as I dug more into it and started to learn it a little bit more, it actually turns out to be a fairly decent program. Now, of course, offering a savings account in an affordability crisis maybe isn't the greatest plan from the government, but at least it is something. So for those that don't know, the first-time homebuyer savings account is basically if you combine an RRSP with a tax-free savings account. So you kind of get the benefits of both of those while not getting all of the negatives that come with both of those. They're both great programs that can be used for actually a down payment to a house. But this first-time homebuyer savings account allows you to put down $40,000 of your own money into this savings account and have it grow tax-free and used towards a down payment. Now, there's caps on how much you can put in per year. A lot of people have made the mistake saying it's only $40,000. That is incorrect, because just like a TFSA or an RSP, as those investments grow, that would get larger. So this down payment is not capped at $40,000. It's $40,000 that you can contribute. Any growth beyond that can still be used as a down payment. Now we've got a global news series of articles. They've got part 1 and part 2 out, called New Routes. This is actually a really cool series that Global News is doing. They're looking at the Canadian real estate market and affordability and a whole bunch of different things, everything kind of pertaining to what's going on in the Canadian housing market right now. And the first part is talking about how the Alberta government has very aggressively made it targeted ads and put billboards up all over Toronto specifically, but they're definitely going after Ontario in general, trying to lure people out of Toronto and Ontario to Alberta, talking predominantly about how much more affordable housing is, and comparing Calgary versus Toronto, where in Toronto, home price index shows the benchmark price well over $1 million, and in Calgary, it's half of that. Of course, your dollar goes a lot further in Calgary, and higher incomes in Calgary as well. The median household income in Calgary is actually quite a bit higher than it is in Toronto. So you get higher paying jobs, or at least the median home income is higher in Calgary, and you have lower house prices. It's actually a pretty good combination. Part 2 talks about some of the ill effects of this, because Calgary has seen a large influx to its population, about 100,000 people in just the last 4 years, and they're expecting to hit that quite easily over the next 4 years. That means that there's been a significant upward pressure in rental prices in Calgary. In fact, Calgary has seen rent prices increase at some of the fastest paces in Canada, easily outpacing Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, about 25% in the last year or so. Calgary used to be, at least rental-wise, and still purchasing home-wise, but rental-wise, a very affordable city compared to other large centers in Canada, and it's quickly been climbing the list. And so the part 2 of this article is talking about a local Calgary resident that is struggling to find a new rental home because of how much competition there now is in Calgary. They've got pretty much a 0% vacancy rate in Calgary. They're seeing 40, 50, 60 people applying to rent places, and we're seeing bidding wars and offer nights and all that type of stuff. The things we were seeing a year and a half ago for people looking to buy a house, well, the same things are happening in Calgary for the rental market. And as I've talked about in my monthly Canadian real estate market update, there's a huge influx of foreign buyers buying properties specifically as investment properties in Calgary. Those foreign buyers are coming from Toronto and Vancouver. There is a huge surge of money coming from those two centers. Everybody sees Calgary as the new gold rush in the Canadian real estate market, and there's piles of money pouring into it, and we're seeing it spill over now into Edmonton as well. But check out these 2 articles. They're really interesting. Next up, an article out of BNN that Canada is going to stick with its immigration targets despite the current housing crisis. Now, every time I talk about immigration on this channel, I always have to preface it saying, I am not against immigration. People want to come to Canada. I love it when we have people that strive and dream of becoming Canadians and work hard to be able to come here. So please don't take this as I'm against immigration. What I am frustrated by, though, is that our immigration policy doesn't line up with our housing policy. We have people that want to come to Canada. They see it as a dream. They get here and now they don't have housing opportunities, maybe the job opportunities, the healthcare opportunities that were promised them. And of course, for Canadians, the same problems apply as well. Now, if you go back not that long ago, and maybe I'll play a couple of clips here, the federal government was talking very much about how housing had to be a major priority.
A Liberal government will prioritize significant new investment in affordable housing. For far too long, a first home has been out of reach for far too many. It's time to change that. And I'll be blunt as well. Housing isn't a primary federal responsibility.
And yes, municipal governments and provincial governments at times are barriers to getting more housing built, and they are definitely part of the problem, but they're also not only the solution. You have to have all levels of government working together. And it seems now that the federal government doesn't want to be part of the solution, which to me is just absolutely crazy. They're saying they want to be, and then they're not saying that it's their problem to deal with. It's other levels of government. Well, I'm sorry, that is simply just not true. All levels of government are going to have to work together. You have a federal government that wants to have a huge ramp up in population for economic reasons. Well, then the housing policy has to match that as well. And right now, we're just not seeing all levels of government working together to solve it. And we have a housing crisis, and it's going to get worse. I promise you that, because we're simply not able to build enough homes to match population growth. I have a feeling we are going to be talking about a housing shortage and a housing crisis for years in Canada until we take a strong and concerted effort and focused effort to deal with this. Just last year alone, for example, we were short about 400,000 homes for the number of people that came to Canada. And that will likely be replicated and probably worse this year because we're seeing housing starts decline with immigration ramping up. And if you read through this article, the new immigration minister is saying that they're going to be looking at the immigration targets. Those will come out in November, and they do not see a world in which they reduce immigration. In fact, it sounds like they're planning on increasing immigration, making this problem worse. Now, since you've made it this far in the video, it's probably because of my awesome haircut, right? Or maybe you're just really interested in real estate, think about buying a house. And if that's the case, if you're in Regina, obviously I'd love to help you out. But even if you're not in Regina and you're looking to buy a house somewhere else in Canada, you don't have a great real estate agent yet, I can handpick one for you. If you look in the description of this video, there's a link to my calendar where you can book me in for a buyer's consultation. I'm gonna call you up, learn about what's important to you in a house and in a real estate agent. Then I'm gonna get you paired up with the best real estate agent for you in your market. And while you're at it, if you love this video, please give this video a like, subscribe to Bald Prairie Real Estate if you love learning about the Canadian real estate market. Leave comments below because I love chatting with you guys in the comments section below. And as always, thanks very much for watching.